Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Planning and Development Committee. It is April 23rd at 10:30 a.m. I'm going to do a roll call. I'm Davita Russell, Vice President of Council, the Chair of the Planning and Development Committee, and the Vice Chair is here. What's his name? What's your name? There you go. Mr. Cobb is, Councilman Cobb is here, and the member of our Planning and Development Committee, as well as the chair of, the president of council, Mr. Tony Kuda.
Here.
All right. So we're going to move forward with our development discussion. We're going to do our legislation at the end to give people who are here visiting an opportunity to go home and leave. And while we go through our legislation. So before we start, so I see some new faces, people I have not met before, and the people on Zoom. Can you hear us?
Yeah, perfectly. Thank you.
Tracy Miller, can you hear? Joseph?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Okay, I'm just making sure everyone can hear. We're going to go around the table and everyone introduce themselves, and then we'll come to you on Zoom so you can introduce yourselves as well and tell us 2 minutes about who you are and why you're here. So let's start at everyone know Councilman Cobb.
Hello again.
So, all right, so we'll start this end of the table.
Sure. My name is Michael Love. I'm Planning and Development Director for the City of South Euclid. We were invited by Councilperson Russell to share some perspective on development that we've done in South Euclid over the past few years.
Thank you so much and welcome.
Keith Benjamin, Director of Community Services and Development, City of South Euclid. I also moonlight as Mayor of the Village of Brandon.
All right.
Well, welcome. And we already know who our President of Council is, Tony Kuda,
Absolutely.
and you are?
I'm Jeremy McBride, founder of Flavor Neighbor. I'm a Cleveland Heights resident from birth. My mother was a teacher in this district for 35 years. I've been in Los Angeles the last 15 years, developing concepts, primarily in the underserved space. So essentially, my company, we scale and build, we create and scale concepts in underserved communities. So the communities that need them the most, we come bring to light. I was able to create a very successful restaurant group in Los Angeles, which started in Skid Row. So if you know anything about Skid Row, it's one of the most impoverished areas in the United States. And building there, I kind of found my purpose through food and development to essentially create spaces that it doesn't matter what walk of life you are. If you create a safe space for people to come, they will come in fellowship regardless of where it is. So I was inspired to come back to Cleveland Heights in general, and potentially continue my work here.
All right, well, welcome. And welcome home.
I know, right?
Hi, my name is Lee Chilcote. I'm the new Executive Director and Housing Manager for Future Heights. We're a nonprofit here in Cleveland Heights and University Heights. We do a range of programs from community engagement to local business support to housing. And I'm here because in the past, we redeveloped houses. We redeveloped about 20 houses in Cleveland Heights, and we are restarting that program to basically take distressed or vacant houses, rehab them, and then sell them to owner occupants. So I'm here for that program.
Okay, thank you and welcome.
Thank you.
And now for our director.
Eric Sam, Director of Planning, Neighborhoods, and Development for the City of Cleveland Heights.
Welcome.
Paul Volpe. I'm an architect, an urban designer, and a developer. I love for sale housing, infill housing in urban neighborhoods. And I'm here because I think this is a great idea. We needed this. We needed to get together and talk about development in the city.
Absolutely.
Welcome, Mr. Volpe. And you are?
Hey, good morning. My name is Lothario Marchman. I'm also a Cleveland Heights native, partner with Jeremy McBride on several different business ventures. I also own a company called Community Career Outreach. We are a workforce construction company. We provide workforce solutions to many of the larger outfits, Marus Brothers, Panzica, all the bigger outfits. We are actually a startup company. My career was 16 years in community development, served as director of real estate. at a nonprofit in Cleveland. So I worked on both sides of the spectrum in Detroit Shoreway and also on the east side of Cleveland. And I started my own firm 3 years ago. We created over 100 jobs, put millions of dollars back into the hands of Clevelanders on the Woodhill Choice Project, which is it's a 6-year, 6-phase, $600 million project. It's probably one of the bigger ones that we're working on right now. I help bridge these opportunities of workplace and workforce into vibrant, communities. And I know that you have to have all the different, spokes on the wheel to make neighborhoods, what we were. Like I said, I'm 15 years in this field, but 30 years in Cleveland Heights myself. So we want to make sure that our neighborhood is vibrant and people are people are getting opportunities as well. So absolutely.
Well, welcome, both of you. You live here?
I do.
Okay,
Yes.
all right. Let's go to our Zoom, and this is Addie, our council clerk.
Hey, Addie.
Okay, so we will start with Miller.
Hello, my name is Tracy Miller, and I'm on here with the Kinfolk Group.
Welcome. You want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I'm a developer in the Washington area, DC area. We've been in business about 21 years, and we're looking forward to participating with helping Cleveland Heights develop and grow the community.
Well, thank you so much. Appreciate your coming on. Matthew.
Hey everybody, Matthew Weimer. I'm with WXZ. I work in real estate development and I'm a Cleveland Heights resident. Today I am here in the capacity of a Future Heights board member.
Oh,
Happy
welcome.
to be here. Thank you.
Joseph?
Yes, hi, this is Joe Cornwell. I'm with the Kinfolk Group, and I've been in finance and real estate for over 30 years, and we're looking to do some fantastic things there in Cleveland Heights. Thank you, Davida, for inviting us on this call.
You're very welcome and welcome. Kinfolk's Group. That's an interesting name.
Tucson Gaskins with the Kinfolk Group. I, along with Tracy Miller and Joseph Cornwell, are excited about the opportunity. Thank you for having us here.
Welcome. And Taylor, last one.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ben Lee Taylor. I'm with Memphis Revelation. It's a small development firm based out of Memphis. I fell in love with Cleveland and started to zone in on a place that I would like to ideally live, but also I saw that there was a lot of development opportunities there. And so I got connected with the Cleveland Heights Group and then with you, Davida. So I really thank you for this opportunity and I look forward to doing work with Cleveland Heights.
Well, welcome. Thank you for joining us. Okay, so we're going to continue from our last meeting. And our last meeting, we've been starting off with the perimeter. Let's start here.
Fulton Benya, JS, and Planning Development Specialist for City of South Euclid.
Well, welcome.
Michael, I'm just an interested citizen.
Well, welcome, Michael. Yes, ma'am.
I'm Kelly Upsek. I live on Delaware, and I'm here. You can say I'm kind of representing some of the other residents to talk about one of the ordinances that you have on.
All right, welcome.
Good morning, Julie Kaufman. I work in economic development here in the city.
Alan
Welcome.
Butler, I'm Assistant Director for Housing Department.
Okay, sir.
Mayor Khalil Sarin, Mayor of City of Cleveland Heights.
Okay, well, welcome everyone. Thank you for go ahead, Miss. Okay, I'm sorry.
Hi, I'm Candy Mashmore. I've been assisting developers in Cleveland Heights to make their homes prettier.
Nice.
And then I became a developer with the monstrosity in the city of Cleveland in one of the worst areas. And the project became the sweetheart of the city of Cleveland. And now I'm buying a property in Cleveland Heights to make my little corner.
All right, nice. Welcome.
Thank you.
My name is Paul Carras. I'm an investor in Cleveland Heights. I have several properties that I own in Cleveland Heights.
Well, welcome. Thank you. Appreciate you all coming. So we started off with zoning to figure out how Cleveland Heights needed to change their zoning for more modern properties and new development and update it to today's living. And so we started to take this under task. And one of the developers, who I don't think is on today, suggested that we talk to Southeast Lyndhurst because they had a perfect zoning plan that they did regarding buildings. How many homes?
Well, in total, we have about 130 homes under construction right now.
Wow. Yeah, so it was recommended that we talk to you all to find out what was your secret, what was the zoning changes that you all did to make this happen, and how can we maybe look at what you have done and help Cleveland Heights with their zoning needs as well. So let me just turn it over to you and let you have the floor and give us a synopsis of what, how you started. I know it was a massive bill. How many years did it take? Because it looked like it went up, all these houses went up in a couple of years. It looked like it was very quick. Just give us a synopsis of what we should look at, or maybe other cities should look at, as far as what you all have done as far as the zoning changes in building 100 and something houses simultaneously.
Sure. So.
Well, I'll let Director Love take control of the conversation, but I think there was a long leeway of preparation that the city undertook to be able to number one, have the number of infill lots that we currently have. And that goes back to our history of, number one, from the recession, the housing foreclosure crisis and the recession back in 2008, 9, 10. And the three steps that we took at that time to prepare ourselves for the future. One was, this is before the county had established their own land bank. Mm-hmm. We established our own land bank. Secondly, we implemented a citywide CRA, Community Reinvestment Area. And then thirdly, we established our own nonprofit Community Development Corporation, One South Euclid, to convey these properties for sale. And so those were sort of the three things we did as we saw the number of vacant homes rising and looking at the need to potentially demolish homes and prepare sites for redevelopment. And then obviously some additional sites came on board, but I'll hand it over to Director Love to give an overview of that.
Yeah, I'll try to be as brief as possible while still giving you a good synopsis. But as Keith was saying, we originally, started our affiliate CDC One South Euclid back in really when the recession was really starting. But then in 2012, 2013, we launched the Build, Grow, Thrive residential resale program. So basically how that program worked is that we were taking properties that were going through tax foreclosure, whether they were vacant lots or properties with structures on them. When they would go through tax foreclosure, we would take them into our land bank if they did not sell at sheriff sale, so that the city would have site control. With the vacant lots, we were holding them. With properties with structures, if they were salvageable, we were selling them to rehabbers to rehab for owner-occupant buyers. If they were not salvageable, we were demolishing the properties and holding the vacant lots. So the vacant lots throughout this time were available to be sold, but just being frank, there wasn't a lot of interest. Part of that, I think, was due to the market conditions that we were in, and part of it was due to the obstacles that were in place with our zoning code. So basically, I think between 2013 and early 2020s, we accumulated about 120 vacant lots, and we sold probably 30, but most of the ones that were sold were sold for side lot expansion. Under 10 were sold for new infill home construction. So, as 2020 came, the market really took a turn and took off. So there was a lot more interest in people wanting to do infill construction. We were approached by many more people about looking at buying these lots that the city owns to do infill construction. But our zoning code had a lot of obstacles in place. So South Euclid zoning code was written, the majority of it was adopted in 1969. And basically, the zoning code was written for the areas of the city that had not yet been developed at that point. So South Euclid, for the most part, was built, it's a post-war community. 85% of the houses or so were built between about 1945 and 1960. But there were still areas of the city that had not been developed yet. So the zoning code was developed to encourage that 1970s style construction. But by doing that, they pretty much made the vast majority of the city out of compliance with the zoning code. So the majority, I think when the County Planning Commission did a study, over 70% of our housing stock didn't comply with the current zoning code. So we knew that a change was necessary. So at that time, we partnered with the First Suburbs Consortium as well as the County Planning Commission to do a single family zoning study of all first suburb communities. After that zoning study was completed, First Suburbs offered the chance for 2 communities to have the County Planning Commission come in and really look at and revise their zoning code to better serve the city. So about 4 or 5 communities expressed interest in moving forward with that. There was a lottery held, and South Euclid and Euclid were the 2 communities that were selected. So basically, we were able to receive grant funding to redo our zoning code through a grant that First Suburbs had obtained from First Federal, and I'm thinking there were some county funds in there as well, but I can't recall for sure. But the city only had to pay $2,000, so that was a very good bargain to get the zoning code revised. So we partnered with County Planning to really take a deep dive into our residential zoning code, which, as I mentioned, hadn't really been touched since the late 60s. So coming out of that review, we decided on 2 things. A, we decided that we really needed to develop an infill overlay district. So basically, by doing this infill overlay district, it would allow for single family home construction throughout all of our residential districts that pretty much match what was existing without having to go through any additional hoops, such as obtaining variances from the Board of Zoning Appeals, et cetera. It also was more conducive to the type of construction we wanted to see because, as I mentioned, it's matching what's existing already there. Homes still do have to go through approval by the Architectural Review Board, which I would strongly suggest, keeping in any zoning code for that extra layer of protection to make sure it's really fitting the fabric of the neighborhood and the community, but allowing the setbacks to really match the existing and allowing for people to build on the lot sizes that are there versus getting all of these variances has made it tremendously easier to construct infill homes in the city. So the other part of our zoning code that we really looked at was the planned unit residential development section of the code. So we did have a PURD section that had been put in place in the early 2000s, but it really needed some massaging to make it work for what we were looking to do. And the city has, at the time had about, I would say 7 or 8 sites throughout the community that would be ideal for PURDs. There's still a few that haven't been developed yet that are out there. So that was kind of the other component. We really took a look at that and revised it to make it work. So, we increased the density to allow for more units. We also decreased the amount of land you needed to be able to do a PERD. And we also were looking at alternative housing types, not just single family or two family homes, but cluster homes, townhomes, condos, etc. We haven't done tiny homes yet,
Okay.
but that could come in the future to allow for PERDs. So, we worked with Planning Commission and City Council, and City Council officially adopted the zoning code amendments in early 2023.
How many did you have total amendments? Do you?
So we pretty much, because of everything, when you start diving into your planning and zoning code, one change leads to other changes. So it pretty much was a rewrite of the planning and zoning code to make it all flow. So it was extensive. It was probably 150 pages when we were done.
At least, yeah.
So after this new zoning code was adopted, that got a lot of publicity, in the media. And we had lots of calls from developers interested in, doing projects in the city.
You mean changing the zoning codes brought that much interest? Wow,
Lots of interest,
Nice.
yeah.
nice.
A lot of outreach, a lot of communications outreach to developers, media outreach to let them know that we're open for business.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
So since the zoning code adoption or revisions were adopted, we've seen, I'm trying to think, we've seen about 50 infill homes built or currently under construction in the city. So, basically, as I mentioned, we had about those 120 lots in our city land bank. And basically how South Euclid sells property in our land bank is City Council declares that the property no longer has a municipal purpose and conveys it to our nonprofit, One South Euclid. The city, though, holds the property until such time that a buyer is in place. And One South Euclid and the city have a fantastic working relationship, and we're working together to find that buyer. Then once the buyer is in place, the property transfers from the city to One South Euclid for $1 and then transfers to the eventual buyer all in the same day. When the buyer takes possession of the lot, the proceeds of the sale go to One South Euclid. The city does not provide direct funding to One South Euclid, but rather it's primarily funded through the sale of property. So that's kind of the city's contribution to allowing One South Euclid to function and provide programming for the community.
And grants for residents, exterior maintenance grants to low, moderate income residents as well.
Yes, so we have an agreement between the city and One South Euclid that's revisited once every 3 years between council and One South Euclid that kind of governs that, basically, especially now with the amount of money that's flowing into One South Euclid from all of these property sales, this is what, One South Euclid is looking to do. So they're required to provide exterior maintenance grants, required to do grants for seniors for snow plowing, landscaping, etc. So it's a pretty innovative model to basically allow the nonprofit to get funding and then also provide services to the community. So that money is being directly reinvested back into the community to benefit our existing residents. And with the property sales, we've seen really efficient building processes under the new code. I think out of those 50 homes, only 2 homes needed variances. Previously, pretty much you couldn't do new home construction in the city without obtaining a variance from the BZA. In the time that I've been working for the city, I can't remember a new home that didn't have to get some type of variance in order to proceed, but we've pretty much eliminated that step. We've been very impressed with the design of the homes. We feel that they really fit. You may have seen some of them driving through the community, but they really blend in well. I would say that a lot of times you can't even tell that it's infill housing. So, you know, we've been very, very impressed with that. Also, the sale prices have been very above market as well. So we're averaging anywhere for the infill homes between $350 and $425 or so for the infill homes. And you have to remember that, you know, a lot of the neighborhoods where the infill homes are going were the neighborhoods that were hardest hit by the foreclosure crisis. So in these neighborhoods where people are paying for new homes between, $325 even into the 400s, back in 2016, 17, 18, you could obtain homes in those neighborhoods for $80,000, $100,000, et cetera. So it's a major win for those neighborhoods. We are offering on all new construction a 5-year 75% tax abatement. That seems to be working really well for us. We have not had an ask from any developer for a higher abatement. That seems to be the happy medium. That's allowing for the new construction while also getting that abatement to keep the homes at an affordable level. In addition to the infill construction, in revising the PERD code, as I talked about, we also have 3, technically 4, because one is already complete. We've had 4 PERD developments come forward. They are all the same developer with Summers Development, who I understand is beginning some work in Cleveland Heights. We've had a fantastic working experience with them. And they want to do more in South Euclid. In fact, they're looking at another piece of property that I think they'll be ready to move forward on very soon. But basically, how Summers came into South Euclid, we had an old elementary school site that South Euclid Lyndhurst Schools demolished back in 2008, 2009, so height of the recession, and it sat. They had put it up for sale a few times. The right proposal had never come forward. They put it up for sale again right around the time we were adopting the new zoning code. So it was perfect timing. So Summers Development came in and purchased the site. They built 17 single-family homes on the property that really blend into the neighborhood. But I think more importantly, they also dove into infill. So adjacent to the site is Greenvale Drive. And Greenvale Drive, the city had purchased and demolished 9 duplexes back at the height of the recession that were extremely nuisance properties. So it was extremely impressive to see all 9 of those lots have new infill homes built on them, all selling for over $300,000. I think back, 10 years ago, we could have never imagined that would have been the outcome. So it was really a fantastic outcome to see. And Greenvale is just totally transformed if you drive down the street. And they blend in. And interestingly enough, Greenvale is a street of duplexes. So everything is a 2-family home. Then you have these new single-family infill built in. And it just flows perfectly as you drive down the street. So it really has been a fantastic outcome, and also a great outcome of seeing different types of housing on the same street. So we're really happy about that. So the success of the Loudon development led Summers to explore additional opportunities in the city, and they have 3 PERD sites under construction right now. So one is Queen Anne Court, which is the extension of an existing street that had never been finished when that neighborhood was built. So they extended the street and are building 15 single-family homes. All are under contract for over $400,000. And I know that 7 are under construction as we speak. The other 8 will be coming out of the ground very soon. And then we have 2 townhome developments that have just broken ground, both in our Mayfield Green downtown district. They're both called St. John's, but one is St. John Woods. This is property that's on 6 acres behind the St. John Lutheran Church and Cemetery on Mayfield Road. So they're constructing 41 townhomes in that development. And then the other development is called St. John Meadow, and this is off of Francis Court behind the old Aleshi's building. We're really excited about that development because it's gonna have a really Tremont or Ohio City feel to it, I think, how it really fits in that neighborhood. That site was the site of the old Prassey Road basket factory that burnt down way back in the day in the 1960s, and it's actually sat vacant since that time. So there was a development proposal in the early 2000s, and that developer did put in all of the infrastructure, but because of the recession, never finished the development. So it's kind of sat in a half-finished state since about 2008. So we're excited. Summers came in. It's going to be a really dense development. They're doing 24 townhomes. So it'll be right off Mayfield Road in our May Green district. And then Francis Court, which is the street that runs against it, they bought the vacant lots on that street as well to do a 4-unit townhome building and then 2 single-family homes. So I think it'll really feel dense. It'll really feel like a walkable urban neighborhood. So it's a very exciting development.
Wow. That is a lot. That's amazing. So let me ask you a question. So once you've completed all your zoning and Summers kind of fell in your lap, how long did it take them to actually, from start to finish, to build the homes?
So I will say, out of any development company I've ever worked with, Summers has just been amazing with their ability to follow through. From them coming forward with a proposal, going through the process, and then being under construction, from the time they've had their approvals to the time they have shovels in the ground, as soon as we're approving plans, they're ready to go.
Wow.
So I've been extremely impressed with how quickly they've been able to move.
And the homes have sold at such a fast pace. The Loudon School property, which was really our first test with Summers Development, and Brian Holmes, who was the construction agent who built the homes. We put those went on the market, and how many homes sold within 3 weeks?
They were sold
The
out.
entire development, over 20 homes sold within 3 weeks.
Wow. I drive that area a lot. And I'm a school bus driver in South Euclid.
Sure.
Yes. So I know the lay of the land very well, and I take that road to come home and go back to work every day. And when I saw the homes going up, I immediately called Ruth Gray, the council president. I says, what in the world is going on here? These houses are just, lots are just, because they put a stake in the lot, and I says, what's going on? And she told me about Summers, and that's when I called to introduce myself to figure out what was they doing and what was going on. And I asked them to kind of really talk to the city, but I think someone on the city somewhat was familiar with them. And so that's how some of the connection came about. But they've been part of our group and talking us through what we can do to change some things, because we have a lot of vacant lots that we want to put new build on, but we want to, and I'm speaking for myself, but I think it resonates throughout council that we want something that comes up quickly, where we don't want to wait 5 or 10 years for 40 houses to be built. We want 40 houses to be built, or all these lots to come about simultaneously, so that you could see the neighborhood transform quickly. And I was impressed I believe those houses, and I could be wrong, but it seemed like those houses went up in a year's time.
Oh, no. They did. Oh, less than a year. Yeah.
Less than a year?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And it was amazing. So
and they all sold very quickly, and they sold in a market environment where mortgages are 6-7%. So they're still selling very, very well, even with current market conditions with interest rates.
I don't see an empty house. Yes.
So I have two quick questions. The zoning, you changed it from what to what?
Sure, so basically the base zoning didn't change, so we, in South Euclid, we have 4 residential districts, R40, R50, R60, R75, which is basically the amount of frontage. So the base zoning districts are still in place, but what we did was we created an infill overlay district to encourage new single-family housing on vacant lots. So basically, that applies in all of the zoning districts, and the setbacks get progressively larger based on, you know, the zoning district. So R75 are our largest lots, R40 are our smallest lots.
Okay.
But under the old zoning code, pretty much every house that was existing in the R40 was out of compliance. If the house burnt down, you couldn't duplicate it according to the code. So by creating that infill overlay district, we brought everything in compliance because you can now match existing. So it eliminates the need for variance.
So I know you can't speak to demolition or grant money for demolition now, but were you able to get grant money for the demolitions you did do?
The vast majority of demolitions that we did were funded through the county land bank.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Cop.
A couple of questions. In your purchase agreements for the vacant lots, did you impose a time limit on how long the developer had to complete a home?
Yes, so they have 6 months from the time they close on the purchase to initiate the city approval process. And then they have 1 year to complete the house.
In terms of arriving at the sales price for either the vacant lots or for any vacant homes, how did you determine what that sales price was going to be?
So that's a really good question. So the city, through working with One South Euclid, you know, when we launched the program, we really felt that our lots had value. Now, you know, we're willing, we always were looking at selling below market value. So, but by the same token, we didn't want to give the lots away because there have been lots over the years that were privately owned, you know, for various reasons that never came under the city's ownership that, you know, might sell for 30, 40, 50,000. So it's hard then for the city to justify, well, we're going to give away this property for $1, especially when it's the opportunity to use the proceeds to fund our nonprofit. So we generally looked at appraised value as a starting point, but I will say that it's really a negotiation between One South Euclid and the developer to arrive at a final price. The appraised value is taken into account, but it doesn't always determine the final price. You know, one of the reasons is the city is really removing itself from the negotiations. We help find the buyer, we partner them up with One South Euclid, but it's really the One South Euclid and the developer that are negotiating and arriving at that final sale price.
Go ahead.
And One South Euclid, that's the city's Community Improvement Corporation?
Community Development
Corporation. Okay, do you guys have an improvement corporation?
No, we had looked at that, establishing either a CIC or a CDC back in 2008, 2009. And at that time, we determined, we had looked at different models, suburban models, because we wanted to be comparable. And we found a model out of Berea. They had their own independent CDC. And we kind of modeled One South Euclid after Berea, which no longer exists. But we found that we wanted something that would be independent, but work with an agreement from City Council that's reviewed every 3 years, so that we make sure that whatever money is generated goes back into the community. But we decided on the CDC model versus the CIC model, where typically you have council people sitting on boards, on the board. We wanted something that would be independent.
And just one more follow-up then. When the city acquired these properties from the land bank, did you then transfer them to the CDC?
So the city actually holds the property until such date that One South Euclid has the buyer and the property is actually ready to transfer. So that the transfer actually occurs in the same day. One South Euclid doesn't hold any property. The city holds the property and then it transfers from the city to One South Euclid to the buyer all at the same day.
And then the proceeds go to the CDC.
Correct.
Right. And the other reason why we went the CDC model is with an independent board of residents. Was to take the politics out of it. We wanted to make sure that politics was not a factor in determining who gets a piece of property as best as we could. And it's worked out, so far it's worked out pretty well.
I want to follow up on one of Councilman Cobb's questions. So when you're determining the value of the lot to sell, intimated in what you said was the negotiation intimates that you don't do a uniform price for the lots, that there are different prices for different lots based on, right? That's very correct. And that's another reason why the city has removed itself from that part of the equation, because there's the ability for that negotiation. So, obviously if a builder is doing something on scale and buying 5 or 6 lots at once, there's going to be more ability to negotiate than, one lot. Or if it's a new builder that's never done anything before in South Euclid and, we really want to partner with them and get them started, One South Euclid wants to work with them to come up with a price that works, that allows them to get started. So the builder basically makes an offer and that starts the process. There's a property purchase application that they can fill out and that starts the negotiating process. But I did also want to add to Councilman Cobb's point about with the purchase agreement, I did forget this piece of it. The city actually holds the property until such time as the builder actually begins the city approval process and has building permits. So one of the things in the early days of the program that we ran into, particularly before the market got good and we revised our zoning code, is a developer might close on a piece of property and then not do anything with it. So then we're right back to where we were, trying to get the property back from them, etc. So now the city holds the property and One South Euclid holds the developer's funds in escrow until such time that they've gone through the approval process and we've issued building permits. Then and only then does the property actually transfer. So does One South Euclid also do the rehab? So if you have dilapidated properties or vacant and abandoned properties in your land bank, and you want to sell them to a contractor or developer, I guess. Does One South Euclid set the price for those as well?
Yes, although since 2020, that program has pretty much ended because any property that's going through tax foreclosure is selling at sheriff sales because there's such a demand.
Yeah.
So nothing is really coming through to One South Euclid, and One South Euclid has not dove into the market of going and buying property at sheriff sale, which they could do.
Right.
That hasn't happened yet. That's something they could explore in the future. But so we really haven't had a structure to be rehabbed in probably about 5 years, but it could theoretically happen.
But if you're trying to keep properties out of the hands of LLCs.
Yes, no, I totally agree with you that may be a arena that One South Euclid wants to get in. Because, the county does, since COVID, they've done all sheriff sales online. They're no longer in person. So you have investors from all over the country, a lot of times buying properties sight unseen.
Yeah.
So we've dealt with this with some of our vacant lots.
when they go through tax foreclosure, we'll have an investor out of California look at a Zillow image and see that there was a house there. So they'll buy the property, then they'll realize there is no house, and then they say, oh, we don't want this property, but through the county court system, that might be another year or two to get through that process and actually get that lot into our possession. So that had, the online sheriff sales have been an issue.
So the city is actually the holding place for the property, and the CDC is the negotiation arm.
Yes.
Correct.
And then once the negotiations is completed, then the city releases the property. And then monies are put in escrow with the city?
With the
With
title company that One South Euclid uses.
With one side, okay, all right.
Can I have a couple questions?
Yes.
First of all, very impressive. I'm a product of St. Gregory the Great back in the day, which the school was still there. And it's good to see this stuff happening in the old neighborhood. You said there was roughly 50 houses you've completed or have under construction, new houses. And what percentage of those are on infill lots, between existing houses, and what percentage of them are in your cluster developments?
So those 50, when I was referring to, those are all infill.
Those are all infill,
Yeah.
okay. What roughly is your typical lot size? Do you find, lot width really, not depth? You have 40-foot lots, 50-foot lots, 60-foot lots? What do you have in South?
Yeah, I mean, it really varies. It's so that depending on the neighborhood, so that,
where most of the infills have occurred in our.
They would be R50, R60, so 50 foot of frontage. 60.
Okay, I mean, our typical lot size is 40 in our older neighborhoods. It's an older community. And what percentage of the homes have first floor master bedrooms that developers are building?
I don't
There are
think,
very many?
Yeah, I don't think they've done a house actually that maybe one or two houses that don't have it.
Okay.
They are doing that on the first.
Are you finding a demand for first floor masters from folks that would like a new home?
Absolutely.
Okay, that's not a surprise. We are as well. And lot sizes are a challenge. That's why I'm asking, because getting it to fit is difficult, especially if someone wants an attached garage, which is the next question. Are developers like Summers, when they're developing a grouping of homes, are they building attached garages?
Yes, they are.
2-car?
Yes. Now, in the infill, we've seen a mix. We've seen a mix of attached and detached. I personally, again, people love the attached garages, so that's always an ongoing issue with infill.
Yeah.
But there are some lots, particularly when you get into the R40, that in order to get a house that doesn't have all garage, it's got to have the detached garage. So that has been somewhat of a sticking point with builders over the years between the ARB and the builder about doing the attached versus detached garage.
I was going to ask if your ARB and or whatever regulating codes you have per zoning allow for front-loaded attached garages. In other words, can the garage face the street?
Yes. So we have not said that you can't have that. I think.
But you discourage it.
Yeah.
If you can.
Yeah, we're working with developers to figure out a way to potentially find alternatives. But on the other hand, I think there are some models of houses that have been built in the infill that do have that front loading attached garage that I think really do fit the neighborhood. I will say back in when we first started doing infill construction, maybe in 2012, 2013, there were some houses built that were pretty much entirely garage. And that's what actually triggered. So another thing that we did, and I know Cleveland Heights has probably always had this, but up until about 2015, ARB did not review residential construction. So that was a zoning change we made back then that, hey, look at this infill. ARB needs to get a handle on this and review it. So since then, I think it's made it more of making sure we're fitting the neighborhood.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, Eric.
I do have some questions, but of course I want to say, thanks guys for coming. Obviously, there's a lot of inspiration. I think that's gone both ways. A lot of the things that you guys have said, it's like we're in the same choir together. We're not even preaching to each other. Right. And certainly, something we've been talking about from get-go is that zoning is key to this, and you can see how it makes all the difference in the world. And Keith was exactly correct. It's not, you don't just adopt the zoning and wait for people to come. You're telling people that we're doing this. And that's, I think, what's part of what you're doing here today. I did want to ask just two questions. Number one is, particularly since Summers has,
You mind speaking up just a
yeah,
little bit?
sure.
Okay.
Certainly, particularly since Summers has a whole bunch of properties, have they been coming to the ARB with 20, 30 at a time? Has there been a reaction to that of people saying, oh, we don't want to see this same home? Because we've heard that already when we sort of had our first aborted attempt on this was, oh, we're going to see the same home throughout the city. And the answer is, well, no, there can be different models. But I just sort of describe your experience with.
Yeah, so when they first, what we've done with the single family developments, the townhomes are gonna be a little bit different, but what we've done with the single family developments is they have come to ARB for initial conceptual approval. So they're not asking for approval for any specific lot, but they're just presenting. So basically, when they first came in for the Loudon development, ARB made that a stipulation as part of their conceptual approval that no house of the exact same style could be built next door to each other. They originally came in with 3 potential styles for the Loudon development. In working with ARB, we expanded that to 6. So there were 6 different styles of home, and they were also saying that no home of the exact same style could be built adjacent to each other. So that has worked pretty well. On the infill, we're looking at a lot of different styles. I'm really excited for this new infill home that's going in on Plainfield, because Plainfield is actually one of our 1920s more Cleveland Heights looking streets. So they're doing a Tudor style infill home.
Where at on Plainfield?
1295 Plainfield, so it's right at the Ardmore Plainfield intersection.
I'll be there this afternoon.
Yeah, that one, they haven't broken ground yet. You'll see the site all torn up, but the home hasn't started coming out of the ground yet. But that one I'm really excited to see. So we have had the partnership too of looking at different styles and making sure it's fitting the neighborhood.
My second question, and it's going off, I think, of where Councilman Cobb was going. I know it's been a while since there's been a rehab property, but can you think back to what those were being sold for? Not by the developer, but what the One South Euclid selling them for.
Selling price? Yeah.
Purchase price.
I mean, again, it was a different market too. We probably were, so basically, generally if these homes ended up with the city / One South Euclid, it was because they were in really rough shape and were demolition candidates that were then getting salvaged and getting rehab that, if it wasn't for city / One South Euclid intervention, the homes would have been demolished. There's no question. So, I mean, at the height of the recession, some of those homes were probably being sold for as little as $3,000. But the thing is that they were being fully rehabbed and sold to owner-occupant buyers, and otherwise they would have been demolished. But some of the nicer homes, as the market kind of got better, we were in between the $30,000 and $50,000 range.
I might ask a question.
Yes.
I love what I'm hearing. I'm curious, with all the houses selling so much, did you do a market study to see who you were going to sell these houses to? Or do you think your community is such, maybe because with all the synagogues, I don't know that the market.
I just want to just let everybody know, because it's being recorded, sometimes if you speak too low, there's not catching it.
Okay.
So just if everybody speak up, no, I just want everybody to be able to speak up a little louder so they can catch it.
So do you think some of your success is because of the potential buyers that are out there for your community? And did you do a market study before you start doing all these different plans and working with the people who are buying them?
We didn't do a formal market study, but Over the years, we've worked with the Realtors Association. We have a Real Estate Professionals Day every year that Michael plans and implements. And so we work with the real estate market, and they know the market, they know their customers. And so, that has worked very well for us. So no, there's not been a formal real estate market study. But obviously in South Euclid, as is the case in Cleveland Heights and University Heights, there are a wide range of buyers from all over Northeast Ohio or moving from other parts of the country into our Heights Hillcrest communities.
Yeah, and actually to that point, I will say that a lot of, I won't say the majority, but a good percentage of the new homes we have noticed, it is out-of-town buyers that are relocating into the Cleveland market. We have seen that. We've also seen a lot of people relocating, within the region as well, but it's just been an interesting note, the amount of out-of-town buyers that we've seen.
How do you go about choosing developers? So, because we're interested, like council, like say, or myself, as we said, building quite a few homes at one time to, create that newness and the density in the community. How do you go about picking your developers or choosing your developers? I hear Summers a lot. What made you choose them or other developers, or what would be something you would be looking at when you look at someone who's developing in your community?
So yeah, I think, obviously there's two different paths. For the development sites with Summers, other than the site that they bought from South Euclid Lyndhurst Schools, the other sites were privately owned, sites that they moved forward on buying, because of the sense of relationship building that they had done with us on the Loudon site and felt really comfortable working in South Euclid and diving in and buying more property. And, we felt comfortable working with them as well. On the infill sites, there's a thorough vetting process that occurs when a developer expresses interest. The vetting primarily occurs through One South Euclid because One South Euclid is actually the entity selling them the property. The city, a lot of times we kind of do our own vetting as well and say, well, X, Y, and Z, I don't know, or this could be a really good fit. But One South Euclid actually has an independent legal counsel. They don't use the city's law department. So One South Euclid's legal counsel does do a thorough vetting of the developer to make sure that, they are who they say they are. They don't have court filings, et cetera, against them. They follow through with what they're going to do, et cetera.
Do you have another question?
No. Okay. Fascinated by the whole discussion.
Any questions? Any more questions? Yes.
Does South Euclid offer tax abatement?
We do offer tax abatement, but it's maximum 5 years and maximum 75%. And it's been that way since 2010, 2011. Our council, back when we decided on doing the short-term abatement, number one, wanted to protect the school system because obviously over 60% of the property taxes go to the school. Secondly, they wanted to convey that our community has value. And so they were not willing to look at anything longer than 5 years. I know many communities, and also sometimes out of necessity, in order to attract new homeowners, you have to offer a longer term, 10 to 15 year abatement. But we really thought at the time, and we still do today, believe that the maximum of 5 years was the way to go, and we've not had any issues in selling homes because of that.
Do you have any down payment assistance programs for the new home?
So we do participate in the county program that's available to all of the communities, the non-entitlement communities of the county. I know Cleveland Heights, I don't think participates in that program
Cleveland Heights, because we're in a town of community, get those funds, so we had a down payment program through their home program.
Oh, through the home resource.
It's the same thing, it's just that the money flows through the county, how money comes through us.
Oh, okay, okay, all right. That was interesting, I didn't know that. Okay. Mm-hmm.
Council Vice President, can I?
Yes, please.
Just wanted to, because actually you wanted to introduce Karen, of course,
Yes.
that's already spoke, but just to the point that South Euclid folks made, I think it's worth mentioning here. So we, and as Paul mentioned, most of our lots are not in conformance with our zoning code. And in fact, Karen, can you just speak briefly to 2010, 2012, what a discussion that had been occurring at that time?
Sure, if you remember back in 2010, 2012, we were doing our sustainable zoning or green zoning updates. And Camaros was our consultants, and they looked at our lots and they found that there was such a large number of lots that were smaller. They had suggested creating a small lot section of the code. At that time, City Council didn't want to do that. They wanted the single family lots to stay the way they were. But because of the number of lots that we have, there are less, because our code currently says a code conforming lot in our single family district is 50 feet wide and 7,500. We've got many, many lots that are much narrower than that, and many that are less than 7,500 square feet. So, one of the recommendations the study said was to perhaps take those lots and create a zoning code specifically for that smaller size lot, just to better address it. Because when you're saying that a lot's supposed to be 50 feet wide and 7,500 square feet in area, all of your setbacks and coverage are based on that size of parcel. And obviously, if you have a smaller parcel, you have to look at different setbacks and how it's built.
Right. Can two parcels be made into one?
You can create a code-conforming parcel, yes. So you could join if we were lucky enough to have two parcels beside each other.
But however, I will interrupt, that doesn't normally match the pattern.
That's right.
Oh, okay.
And that's a good point, because many of these parcels that are now vacant had a house on them.
Mm-hmm.
So, and we've always said that all of our parcels are buildable. It's just that they would have had to come in for variances to get setbacks to be built.
So as part of our Little Neighborhoods initiative, which includes things like tiny homes, these are the things that we want to look at. And I think it's great now that we have a sister city that has gone through this process, adopted zoning, that we can point to say, look, they've done it and it's been successful.
From their conversation, do you see some things that we can adopt within Cleveland Heights regarding changing our zoning?
Well, and thanks to Michael for sending over the zoning districts. I think these are things we want to look at.
Okay.
But I would just caution as part of this larger picture, because every community is different and we want to make sure that it's because it's not just lot sizes, it's maybe they haven't done tiny homes yet, maybe that's something we want to consider. And that's part of what council has funded for this year, so that's our intention.
Yes.
And I think also the lesson learned from the South Euclid folks is that while now everything is popping out of the ground and they have this really quick turnaround, there still was that foundation that was laid, and it took some time to get there. So that's what's great about these conversations is this is what we need to have now so that we can get the foundation to then go build on.
And what is the actual process from start? Say a developer comes to South Euclid. I'm a developer. I'm coming to South Euclid. I want to buy 40 lots. I want to build in your city. What's my process? What do I have to do?
Yeah, so for infill construction, basically, if you're purchasing city-owned lots, you would initiate the process by filling out a property purchase application with Glen South Euclid.
Okay.
They would then go through the process. They'd share it with the city. We'd say yes in our initial review that could work what they're looking to do. They would then negotiate with One South Euclid to come to an agreement. They would do the purchase agreement. Everything would be filed with the title company, and then they would initiate their approval with the city. So they would submit to the city. They would go through our architectural review board. We'd do a zoning review, make sure they don't need any variances. Assuming ARB signs off, they can go through administrative plan review, and then we'd be ready to issue building permits.
And how long is that process from start to finish?
So, I mean, the negotiation process with One South Euclid, depending on how that goes, that can take a month to 2 months. The city approval process is generally about the same, a month to 2 months. We can sometimes expedite that just depending on when they come in. Our ARB only meets once a month. I've been pushing to try to get them meet twice a month, but they're holding firm on the once a month. So that sometimes can be a little bit of a snag in the process to get them, to get it through ARB depending on when they come in the calendar. But we try to expedite things as quickly as possible. For residential construction, everything is reviewed internally by the city too. It doesn't have to go out to a plans reviewer, so that moves things along quickly as well. The PERD, if someone wants to do, a PERD development site, that's a bit more of an extensive approval process. They go through planning commission, and then it goes to city council for approval. They also have to go obviously before architecture review board. So for a PERD, that's 3 months, 4 months. But I will say that last year we had 3 PERD projects running through the process at once, and we got them all through. I think they initiated it in end of March, and it was council's first meeting in July that we approved all the projects. So it was a relatively smooth, efficient process.
I had a question, but I lost it. As developers, you all have any questions?
It's pretty straightforward.
I have a question.
Anyone on Zoom, if you have a question, please let us know.
I got a good question.
Yeah.
This is more on the back end. After you build these homes, are you guys worried about the increase in taxes for your existing residents? If your median sales price was at, say 130, 140, and you're selling them at 400? Or is that's more of down the line?
Yeah, it is definitely a concern that we've been looking at. I would say that the median sale price for South Euclid right now actually pushed up over 200, so we're at 225 now. So it has escalated, but I mean that affordability issue is something that we're exploring in other ways because trying to ensure we have affordable housing is something that's really important. I haven't quite figured out a solution just yet, but it's something that we're really.
And the reason for context purposes, not just to ask a question that's like obvious, but as you're building in, your program here in Cleveland Heights, again, I was a practitioner in the city of Cleveland, so I seen what tax abatement, how it benefits developers and how it benefits owner occupiers that are coming in, but I also saw the flip side to it, what it's doing to existing residents. And I can give you a property address right now, 2876 Ludlow. Taxes on that property was about $1,200 to a half. It's now $5,000. So that's a lot, in the city of Cleveland. And so forced to have to, even as a developer, you're forced to have to. That rental is not going to be $1,100 anymore. That's $2,700. And that's a duplex, by the way. So we're talking about bringing things to scale. We're talking about the markets are doing what it wants to do now, which is a good thing in some cases. But on the other side, as you're designing these programs, you're looking at tax abatement, you're looking at the abatement for new folks coming in. The existing folks
We're looking at trying to enhance our CRA so that we can more effectively for the current homeowner who would like to do renovations in their home, who would like to do a master first floor bedroom and bathroom so that they can age in place. How can we best incentivize that with a tax abatement as well? So that's something that we've struggled with over the years and that we're continuing to look at.
And I would say, Summers now with the developments they're doing, the 5-year 75% is working because of where the market is at. But I would say when the market was weaker, there were a lot of developers over the years coming in and telling us, you know what, we're not gonna build in South Euclid because you won't budge from that 5-year 75%. So I mean, we held firm on that, and that was tough because over the years there were, especially when it comes to the infill, there were people that, you know, were turned away because they wouldn't build without us going above that 5-year 75%.
More so with the infill lots than with the PERD developments, because, you know, between 2010 and 2020, you know, we had Cutter's Creek, which was a major development at Anderson and South Green Roads. Over how many homes are in that development?
About 45, I think.
45 homes, 5 years, 75% tax abatement. Crestview Court per development, also 5 years, 75% tax abatement. So, you know, developers still came in even before we became a hot commodity, and still built with that tax abatement.
So do you have an opening and closing deadline for developers to fill out applications to, it's just open?
It's rolling, yeah.
Okay.
And I do apologize, I do have to be back at City Hall at noon.
Oh, no problem, no problem, no problem. As you can see, that we were totally interested in everything you had to say. You had a wealth of information, and we really thank you for coming and sharing all your information with us, because we really want to be able to move Cleveland Heights into a situation where we can change our zoning to update and be able to build new properties for our residents and tiny homes, so that our elderly can age in place. So those are some of the things we really want to do. So I want to thank you both so much for coming.
Well, you know, in South Euclid, we're blessed to have Director Love. We don't know what we would do without him, but on the same hand, we have an incredibly great working relationship and respect for Director Zamp and all that he has done for your planning and development department and the all-star team. And Karen, I had the pleasure of working in this building and working for the city of Cleveland Heights for over 11 years. And Karen, you're the only one left, I think, the last one standing. So you were here for a little bit of time. Yeah, when I was here, that was a long time ago. But this is my hometown. I'm a proud Cleveland Heights High School graduate, and so whatever we can do to work together and continue moving our communities forward, we're here for you.
Well, please, I will continue to reach out. I live in Cleveland Heights, but I work in South Euclid, and I can't help but see every street in South Euclid because I have to work it every single day. So I'm fascinated of what's going on, and I would love to be able to bring some of that into Cleveland Heights. So I thank you for that.
So thank you. Thanks for having us.
I want to change the subject a little bit because I want to find out more about the two new gentlemen in the room, and Mr. Volpe too. I want you to chime in a little bit about what's happening with you, if you like. Go ahead.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Absolutely. Just by way of context, I had been on a webinar with it was the American Planning Association Latino chapter or division, and they were talking about food, residential, and zoning in Los Angeles. So your brief introduction, based upon that webinar, and they really were speaking about, particularly in the Latino community, how the way food is prepared and served is just much more communal. And so that there was this new zoning approach they were taking, which was essentially allowing for people to cook and sell food out of their homes without it having to be a restaurant.
Correct.
And certainly there was some public health things, but it was a much more flexible thing. So I don't know how much you know about that. I'd love to offline talk to you.
No, 100%.
Because I think it's something you would want to just.
Oh, you're open to it?
Yeah.
Okay, for sure.
Hopefully the rest of the
Yes.
council.
So, and as he was talking, things start going through my head because, especially when you say our distressed areas.
Correct.
And we have quite a few.
Yes, I heard about the Noble Road, I believe it's the Cityscape.
Yes,
We have a streetscaping project.
Streetscape, correct. Okay.
yes. So let's talk about that for a minute. So we're trying to get a full streetscape for Noble Road.
Gotcha.
So you familiar with it.
Correct.
You come from Cleveland Heights, you've been in California, and so now you're ready to come back and say, hey, let me see what I can do here.
Absolutely.
So what, if I can ask you just maybe off the top of your head and just kind of just looking or remembering what Noble Road looks like and the distressed areas that we have there, what would be some of your concepts that you would think that would be good for that area?
It's funny you say that, actually. I come in here, and then I'm moving to email to anyone with a couple of thoughts and actually plans of execution. Like I said, being from Cleveland Heights, once I found out I'll be coming to this meeting, I kind of, took trips up Noble Road and kind of saw.
Oh, look at you.
I know, right? How distressed certain areas are, and how vacant a lot of the places are. And I believe I saw a block in particular which had 4 storefronts on it, and I just used that as a prime example to kind of create this doc. So essentially, just off the top of the head, the overall concept, the initiative aims to transform a block in Cleveland Heights to a thriving hospitality hub that fosters community engagement, economic growth, and cultural enrichment. Each concept complements each other, creating a cohesive and dynamic experience that will attract both local residents and visitors from surrounding areas. And like I said, this is a 4 concept proposal that I'm kind of put together. Concepts are Juicy Fruit, which is essentially an extremely, and just want to backtrack a little bit. Being in Los Angeles, you kind of find a lot of innovative ways that people are creating. And one thing that I kind of feel is kind of missing from the Cleveland Heights area is that innovation and that creativity. But you can only be as innovative as what you surround yourself with. So I was lucky to be in these markets that creativity was the keyhole to bring essentially people in. And so I'm bringing some of those ideologies I feel that will be successful here in Cleveland Heights. First concept I created is called Juicy Fruit, which is actually a personalized juice bar. As you go to most juice bars, obviously you have the person behind the counter who creates the juice concept for you. They pour the juice, puts it in the bottle, and gets it going. But this kind of puts the power back into the hands of the consumer. So essentially, guys come in, we select the fruit, and you're actually doing the juicing yourself. And what that does is kind of creates a community. It creates awareness of what it is we're actually putting in your body, and it takes it a step further than just, I'm getting the juice and I'm going. And it's also innovative, and it can be cute. Kids come in and get factual about the things that they're consuming and being more conscious about what we're consuming as a whole. Next concept that I feel can make sense in this street block corridor was a concept I call Black Chai, which is essentially a tea concept, a tea bookstore, and essentially a conversation starter for the space. This was kind of inspired by some of the spaces, some of the bookstores that I've visited in Los Angeles and Cleveland here. Third Space is one who comes to mind, which is a bookstore in Cleveland on the 105 in Bob Wade Park. But essentially, the space is bigger than a coffee shop. It's a way that community can come and engage with each other. From all walks of life, from the young to the old. You can have these poetry nights. You can have these interactive experiences where culture is on the forefront, and not just one culture. As we know, Cleveland Heights is multicultural. And I'm so grateful to grow up in Cleveland Heights because I was around so many different walks of life. And it's really just a potential hub to bring all these walks of life together. Also, a key point to bring other people from other cities and other local towns essentially to come in and partake as well. Another concept that I feel can make sense synergetically with this is a concept I've named Sandoz, which is New York, which is inspired by a New York style bodega. But essentially what it does is focuses on cultural sandwiches from each city and state. And so, for example, Cleveland, we're known for our corned beef and our Polish boys. I feel like those are 2 staple sandwiches in the city of Cleveland. Well, New York has a sandwich called the chopped cheese, which is very, very popular sandwich. It is, truly. Going back to like Miami, Cubanos are a popular sandwich. So essentially what it does is it brings these different sandwiches from different walks of life. And we are a Midwest town, which wants quality food on the go. And also, we're moving when we want it. So being able to create these different quality sandwiches and also having a revolving door to introduce new concepts and new sandwiches so you have a base menu, but you also have a variety that is interjected throughout the concept. And the last concept that I see can make sense on this corner is a concept called Julia's, which is a fish market and raw bar. So essentially, one thing that I find is lacking primarily in Cleveland Heights is no quality seafood. And I only know that from when I've driven around and I've actually seen, and a quality raw bar experience. And what this does is it's definitely innovative in the space that you can come and potentially pick your own oysters, but it also builds synergy between the concepts. There's no reason why Sandoz can't do a collaboration with Julia's on some of their prized fish that they may have brought in that are fresh off the lake and create a sandwich that, now is the sandwich of the month. So that's just generally kind of the concepts. And this is just something off of, me just seeing the space and just like my brain, just kind of how my brain works. My partner Lothario is more logistics. He's he takes the stuff in my mind. All right, how can we execute? So essentially, those are 4 concepts that I see automatically will build synergy in the neighborhood. Will automatically bring a different set of eyes to the neighborhood. And as I said prior, I build concepts in Skid Row, which is extremely difficult to build in. But like I say, once we've built there, we were able to revitalize a whole block in Skid Row where we were successful. So other businesses came. You have an art gallery come, a brewery, tattoo shop. And we created a whole hub amongst the madness that it was pretty much like a safe zone. And people from so many different walks of life, you see these multi-million-dollar vehicles parked outside of Skid Row and like, what's going on there? And I'm not saying that to say the classism, but it just shows that it doesn't matter where you create it. If it's a quality experience, people want to be a part of it and people will come and support it. So.
Could I say something?
Yes.
So
You want to come to the table?
I just bought a property in Cleveland, downtown Cleveland, on this 2nd and St. Clair. It used to be the old Slovenian area. The street that I bought, this building is 70,000 square feet, has been closed for 50 years.
Whoa.
Took us 40-yard dumpsters just to clean up the building so we could see the walls. Now the building, but what we did from the very beginning, I started before I even went to I bought the building through gas, through the land bank, Cuyahoga Land Bank, and what I did is to involve the community around the building into the project that we were creating. That to the point that we knocked on every door on 62nd and St. Clair. We got to know the neighbors. We spoke to them. We asked them, what would you like to see here? Because we are guests in their home.
Correct.
And I felt that by involving them on the project, they would help us succeed because we would bring value to their homes. We would bring value to the neighborhood. And I didn't want to bring something that would be intrusive to their, I have 100 cars parking there and people coming, partying, getting drunk or whatever. So this has created such an amazing project because I don't need to guard my building. I get calls at 3 a.m. There is a guy trying to break into your building and they call the police and they go out. They are watching the neighborhood for us.
Absolutely.
So we are not becoming we are not somebody that it's imposing into their home. We are becoming a part of their family. So they come into our building. We are far from being finished, but the building during the holidays, like 4th of July, they come to the top of the building to see the holidays with us. So it has been, I think that especially here in Cleveland Heights, that it's such a tight community. I think that including the neighbors into any project that it's made, it's gonna make or break the project.
Definitely.
Because if you are not including the people that have been there through good, bad, the ugly and the pretty and this, they are gonna reject it and they are not gonna help us succeed.
Absolutely.
So I just wanted to say that because our success in that neighborhood, we come in and all the families come out and we stay outside and we chit chat and we talk. How can we improve this? So I think that this is something that most of the developers are not thinking of. Maybe because I'm from a third world country where our neighbor, it's an extension of our family.
Absolutely.
For us to include these people into our decisions, it's such an important part of the success of the project itself that I think that this is missing here in Cleveland Heights. I work with Alan for many years, and I work with Paul by trying to design the houses inside and the people that we bring into the neighborhood and this. And one of the things that we do is to talk to our neighbors. We are going to do this. We are going to do that. What do you think? We did a construction on Hampshire that the neighbors were there. We didn't have to come and check the employees because they did it for us on a daily basis. So I think that this is something that it's very important for you as a council person, for the council team to involve the neighbors into any project that come into a street, into a corner, into a little shopping center, because they are the ones that are going to be most affected by any project that come there. And if they are not involved, the chances for success are much lesser.
And you know what? I wanna thank you so very much for expressing that, because I say that a lot. And not only with development, with anything you do, because people feel that that's their home and you're invading. And if you don't go to that immediate area and talk to those people in that area, it's not going to succeed. And they are going to look at you as an intruder.
Exactly.
And they're going to feel that.
And we are.
And they're going to feel that, everybody's coming to my community, telling me what I want in my community, and no one's asking me.
Yes.
So I appreciate you saying that.
You know, the area where I am at, when I first bought the building, there were hundreds of buildings for sale. And right after we bought, big money is coming to the area.
What's the name of your building?
My building, actually, I found out after we bought that it's a landmark in Cleveland. We just got landmark, which is a pain in the neck because I have to spend more money in everything I do, but they don't give me money, but they want me to spend the money. But it's the first, actually it's called the American Gas Association building on 62nd and St. Clair. This building it housed the first laboratory that tested gas and electrical appliances in America and in the United States and Canada. So now we can make it historical, but it's too much money to be spent if I do it historical and this. But what I'm trying to say, I feel that by respecting my neighbors and by respecting what they hope for the building or for the area, because this is their neighborhood. They've been living there with this monstrosity for 50 years. Dirty prostitution, drugs and everything in. And then I come in and I tell them, hey, that's what I'm gonna do. That's what you're gonna live with. And I think that this is not something that, I think that we have to be a little bit more, be kinder to the people that is surrounding the properties. That's
absolutely right. And I initiated some town halls with people just in the Noble area and the Taylor area. And we had about 100 people come together, and they broke off. And it was so different because when you brought them together, the people who lived in one segment wanted to talk to that segment of people. and the people who lived in the other section wanted to talk to that section of people. And when you tried to cross them, it's like, no, that's not what we want in our community. This is what we want in our community. But just what I find it very interesting that just you coming back from California and you observing just the Noble area, you have actually fed into what a lot of the community there is asking for.
Understood.
And that's enlightening to hear that, because they've told us how many times they want good food shops. They don't want everything to be a hair salon. They don't want everything to be a nail shop. They want coffee shops, tea shops, bookstore. And I come to find out that Cleveland is one of the only cities that have actual bookstores.
Yeah.
And people are still coming here just to go to bookstores.
True.
And so what you just articulated is basically what the residents in that community is looking for. And look how you came, you lived here, you left 15 years and came back with something people have been talking about that they want.
Absolutely.
And actually, I don't know if you are aware, if you went down Noble Road, there's a new development that's coming up.
Okay.
A 52-unit apartment building that Paul Volpe designed. And I don't know how to connect you, maybe Eric could, because another thing came up. Aren't they looking for something in the bottom of that building? To start a tea shop or coffee shop or something?
It's a great example.
I think that would be a great place to start. What's supposed to be on the bottom?
We have a ground floor retail space, and people said they wanted a coffee shop or at least some retail, a community space to gather. And we laid out a space, and it wasn't even in the budget.
Gotcha.
We
what do you know what the square footage is?
It's about 1,100 square feet or something. Yeah, and we have the utilities that are servicing it. And we also built a sort of a room for people, especially kids, to come in and hook their computers up. So it's kind of like a, what do you call it? There's a name for it, a trendy name for those, where you get coffee and you sit, you play with your computer like you do at Starbucks.
That's kind of what you just said.
And then we built a nice big terrace right out on the street. Speaking of the streetscape,
Looking for co-work?
Pardon me?
Co-work area?
Yeah, that kind of a thing. And, we'll have residents here, we'll have kids living in the building, and they'll come down and hopefully they'll get jobs working and operating in the shop, and we do want more of that. That's part of the noble discussions that we've been having with Eric and the Community Development Corporation.
Absolutely. I'd love the opportunity to share this doc with you as well.
Sure.
Yeah. So
well, we'll introduce you to the CDC, Reverend Hicks.
Okay, perfect.
And he's building houses there now and rehabbing, and he's trying to really kickstart this.
So is he taking ownership for the bottom of the building?
Well, he's a partner in the development with the master developer, but TWG, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Reverend Hicks is a partner, and we formed a task force, a neighborhood task force. When I got involved, it was to change the direction of what was being done and get the community involved. And we did that, and hopefully gonna continue that in the next phase in terms of redevelopment. We've got the grocery store, and we've got a lot of buildings that we're hoping to see revitalized.
Beautiful.
All right, so now we gotta go back to her about the community being a part of that.
Well, I can't tell you, I can't tell you how many community meetings we had.
Okay.
I didn't have a life.
Okay. But I mean, that was for that one initial project.
For that one
That was for that one project.
For what's coming up, I know Reverend Hicks wants to continue that. But it's in this particular case, I think the plan, because we've met and talked about it, is to have a real solid partnership with the city together. Because this is more than a building project. This is a neighborhood revitalization project. And the city's involvement is critical, especially since the city is going to be an investor.
So
right?
What's the plan for that?
The plan hasn't come about. In fact, the process is just beginning.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
We have started with the streetscape, which I don't know, Karen, if you want to talk a little bit.
Yeah,
Sure. So we do have a streetscape project.
Why don't you come to the table? Why don't you come to the table?
Sorry, I have allergies, so I'm not contagious, but my voice gets kind of funny. I love all the trees that are in bloom.
Yes.
They don't love me. So we have a streetscape project going on currently, and so just to remind everybody what a streetscape is, it's looking at from the public right-of-way, the curb of the street, up to the property line of whatever building it is.
Correct.
So along Noble, we have commercial districts, we have a lot of multifamily and some single family. So we've already reached out to all the businesses in the areas and held an open house to try to talk to them about just what would you like to see, how could we think about this as one large corridor? What could we do to unify that? What can we do to make it more exciting? What ideas do you have? And so that's taking place. Next week, we are having a public meeting on the 28th. Am I going to the 29th? Sorry, I've got a couple meetings on different days.
Okay.
On the 29th at the Noble Library.
So
It's
maybe you all
another
will be there.
it's another drop-in open house. So by that I mean you can drop in, you can talk to us. We've got boards. It's from 6 to 8 at the Noble Library. So you can come in. There's also some information in our weekly update that gets mailed out. So there's a QR code so you could take a survey online if that's more convenient. But what we want to do is just get some input up front before any design work happens about, what is this public space. But in addition to this, we've asked the landscape architect firms to look at especially our apartment district there, and to come up with a couple of landscape designs that we can then go to property owners and ask them, to try to talk them into, not talk them into, but encourage them to take a look at this and the benefit of landscaping their front yard. And the inspiration, I have to give a lot of credit to the Noble Library, came from the Noble Library. If you're in there, you'll remember they have a lot of areas right outside the library, even along Noble Road, where you feel very private and comfortable sitting there. But as you walk along the street, you can see there's a hedge and then some sitting areas, and it's very comfortable and welcoming. And we thought, maybe this would be a similar amenity that an apartment owner would like to have for their tenants, where it's a private place for their tenants to sit and gather. But as you walk past it, you feel very comfortable and friendly, and we hope would then help enrich that community that we know is in Noble. So that's the project that's going on. We'll be doing Noble Road, and then in May we'll be starting a similar process on the Taylor Road corridor.
And just to add to what Karen said, so the idea is coming out of this is not only a plan, but then types of designs that could be implemented. And council, thank you, in the capital budget, you did put some money aside for the actual installation of streetscapes on Noble and Taylor roads this year. So that would be both for the public owned properties and then for some select private properties.
What's your name again?
Jeremy McBride.
Jeremy, and if it's okay with Karen and Eric, I would love if you all would talk to him more about that Noble Road streetscape, because I think he's going to bring some innovative ideas that people are already talking about. I don't know how it's going to all pan out, because most of those buildings are owned by somebody. And so it's actually about getting into the ones that are vacant, talking to the owners and saying, hey, can we put some of these different shops and eateries into your building, and selling that point to them. Yes.
That's why I think actually probably the best person for you guys to interact with is Julie, because she's been up and down that street.
Absolutely.
She's the best. Yeah.
I believe
She's
it.
amazing.
Thanks, Angie.
All the sunshine.
Yes. So you all have excited me because because they know that has been a pet peeve of mine since I've been on council. Taylor and Noble, trying to get them up to standard to look like the rest of the city.
Absolutely.
So,
and you talking about? I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
So Taylor, you guys thinking what's that between like Annisdale and is it like Blanche? That area, Taylor? Or
No, it would start really at like Euclid Heights.
Okay, Euclid Heights. Got you. Got you. Makes sense.
Just for everyone's sake, so this is a multi-pronged process here. We're not just looking at streetscape. Infill is really important. Rehab is really important. We will be having a market study done of Noble Road. So that's part of an ARPA-funded allocation. And then, of course, there's this sort of interactions with the supermarket and other developers, but I think, we have a good pulse on who's out there. And we want to just, to Candy's point, bring as many people to the table as possible.
What is your focus as far as the grocery store?
Well, it's, hey, let's meet and talk to apparently they're under new management, but
Yeah, banana.
no, Yellow Banana's out of the
Gone,
picture.
it's gone, okay.
And reiterate the fact that, first of all, it should be a store that services the community in the proper way, but then maybe even more importantly, is like, what does that parcel look like? There's some out parcels, like the parking lot doesn't need to be all parking. Could we do some infill, mixed use or commercial there, things like that. We wanna talk to the property.
To be honest with you, my opinion on Noble, on that type of street, narrow right of way, virtually no tree lawns where they exist, they're very skinny and so on and so forth. Most of the improvements can occur on private property, not on public property. And that's why that discussion Aaron brought up is so important. And we've done that before. I've done it before in Cleveland and other cities where you get the property owners involved and they realize the value of carving out some asphalt. Carve out 8 feet of asphalt, you don't need plants and trees. And your whole world is different. Put up a quality sign, add some lighting, and calm traffic. So it doesn't look like one giant parking lot on the street. There's so many things that can be done that are inexpensive that the city can incentivize and support with the stuff that they do in the public right of way.
Trees.
But
First thing we did, we planted 16 trees in front of that building, and just that brought so much life to the area, and the neighbors help take care of the trees and they water them. So it's really including your neighborhood. It's the most important thing, I think.
So, yeah, please keep me posted on what's happening with the Noble and Taylor, whatever's going on. I don't want to be in the dark. You know what I mean? Okay, and I think you'll be a great a really great asset to it. Absolutely. Is there anything else we need to? Oh, Paul.
Well, I mean, look what the time is. I'll just say that.
We have 2 pieces of legislation.
Oh, we do.
We've been sitting here for 2 hours. We're gonna talk about this ordinance.
Yes. Oh, yes, we are. We're not, no, I'm just trying to end this discussion to find out if there's anything I missed.
Most interesting meeting I've ever been to at a city, so you have me all confused on how you've been jumping around, but please.
Go ahead.
What I wanted to tell you very quickly was that, my career has been based on and in designing particularly, and now it's focused on designing and developing together as what this ordinance is about. For example, this project of mine that you're going to talk about today. Long and the short of it is one time, if you can get me on the agenda, I'd like to make a 15, 20-minute presentation about the whole idea of not just zoning, but what Eric and I have talked about, which is actually planning, because this is the order I believe it should go in, which is planning, then zoning, then development. And I'd like to give you guys some real creative empirical thinking on the subject that I think will help influence what ultimately gets done in the zoning codes that these guys are gonna do. And also enhance our ability to do some great development in the town.
We can do that at our next developers meeting.
If you'd like to, that would be great.
Yeah, no, I want to keep it going. I want us to be able to come together to actually produce something. I don't want us. I'm not a meter, just a meet. I'm a meter for action. It's a purpose to these meetings. So, and I don't want it to be a long drawn out story where we're here and we're still talking about it 5 years later. I want to see some action. I want some progress to be done. And wow, I mean, you all have made me very excited today. So I know that there's quite a few people, and I think some of them are on that has talked about wanting to build here and are interested in quite a bit of property here. Have they gone through the proper steps or channels, or is there anything you need to tell anybody that may be on here who has not gone through the proper channel, or if they're interested, like you're new, what they need to do to look at, or if they're interested in any properties or?
So outside of these two folks, everyone else we know.
Okay.
As having been engaged with us in one way or another, resident aside. And so, but just for the people who are watching sake, so we had, and this was a little bit of the spiel I was gonna give.
Okay.
But we did have a open and closed request for expressions of interest process for the city-owned properties, which did close. But since we haven't made any decisions yet as a body, as a council, we have been continuing to receive interest, and we've told folks, hey, send us your interest in those properties. We'll still take them in order, meaning people who have followed the original process we're gonna consider first, but then we're gonna take a look at the new people who have submitted and sort of engage with them. There are still properties that are not interested, people haven't expressed any interest in, so I think we wanna see if we can drum up some business for those properties. But I would say the key person is, once again, Julie, is reach out to her. An easy way is, you can say to Jay Kaufman at clevelandheights.gov, or as though it's planning at clevelandheights.gov, we get that information.
Question, and I don't know if it's good, if it's a proper question or not, so forgive me if I'm out of line. Is there a possibility that we could get a list of the properties that, with the names of the companies who have interest in them, and then the properties that nobody have interest in?
Yeah, we have all of that information.
Sure. Okay. So maybe the properties that, we could say, okay, we know people are interested in these properties, and these are these companies, and the ones who we don't have any, maybe we can advocate and say, hey, we still have these properties. If anyone's interested, please come see us.
That was part of our process. We wanted to, after we sort of got through this first grouping, is then see if council was willing for us to then put it out again.
Yeah. I think there's don't quote me, it's not exact, but maybe 65-ish that no one expressed any interest in.
Okay.
Which is why I've been continuing to have conversations with people and say, all hope is not lost, because we're still doing this and there's still all of these properties.
Okay. Well, yeah, I would love to see what's open and where they're located, and the ones that people have interest in. That would be great. Okay. Any more questions? Nope. Nope. Any more questions? All right, so if you all want to stay, you feel free to stay for a little bit. We have two pieces of legislation that Eric is going to go through. You may find it interesting. So we need to be able to vote on it, to pass it out of committee, to take it to council. So Eric, instead of me talking any further, I'm going to just turn the meeting over to you and go through the two pieces of legislation that Councilman Cobb and I need to weigh in on to move forward. And if anyone who does not want to stay to hear this, you're more than free to go. And please leave your information with me. And I would love to talk to you too. Too. About what you said. I would definitely love to talk to you again.
I'd love to welcome you to my building.
And I'm coming. That's why I wanted to know where it was. So, but please, you feel free to stay for a little while. Okay, thank you. Thank you so much.
So, thank you, Vice President. Just for everyone's sake,
Working with my old firm,
the second piece
city
of
architecture.
legislation-
Yeah, I know. Good to meet you.
The first.
Very nice meeting you.
Well, thank you. Sorry.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
What happened?
Give it a second. I won't wait. So the first piece of legislation, I just wanted to give a bit of background, if it's okay.
Sure. And what number you're going at, 062?
062-2020.
Okay.
So the city had its peak population in 1960, which was 61,000 people. And now we're at approximately 40,000. And part of that is because we have a whole bunch of vacant lots. Part of the problem. In fact, so we have about 300 city-owned lots total.
We have 300 city-owned lots?
Yeah, but that includes things like City Hall.
Oh, okay.
Just so you know.
What about vacant?
I'm gonna get to
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm moving too
Just
fast.
setting the stage here.
Okay, got it.
I'm gonna sit here because
Yeah.
I can't hear you.
So there are different ways.
Reintroducing yourself?
There are different ways that the Ohio Revised Code have for municipalities to dispose of property that they own. And we ourselves have our own legislation on that, or code, which is Chapter 110, which allows various different methods. One method is through introduction of legislation. Another way is you can go through an RFP, you can do an RFEI. There's a lot of different ways to do this, but the point being is that municipalities in Ohio and throughout the United States have an ability to acquire property and then dispose of it to others for development or other purposes. So we had previous attempts at this. If you remember, it was the neighborhood infill project, phase 1. There were 2 developers that were chosen. It didn't really go all that well. So we spent 2022, 2023, 2024 sort of taking a step back, reevaluating how we did that. And a big part of that was looking at those 300 parcels, holistically, to see which ones made the most sense to bring forward. So things that had a civic function, we pulled out. City Hall, the parks. Existing community gardens, we pulled those out. If it was part of an existing project like Cedar Lee Miller at the top of the hill, Taylor Tudor, we pulled those out because they were already accounted for. And then parcels that had previously been identified for parking or even green space, those were also pulled out. And lastly, lots that were like 5 feet wide that were side lots, those were also pulled out because they're unbuildable. And those are going to be dealt with in a different way. So that resulted in, we went from 300 to about 200 that were developable. And primarily as single or 2-family lots.
200?
Yeah, it's a little bit more than that, but generally speaking. Of these, 18 had structures on them. So we then took this approach, inspired by something that Cleveland had done, to issue 2 separate requests for expressions of interest, RFEI. The first one, which was for those properties that had structures for rehabilitation, we prioritized that because those properties, as you heard from South Euclid folks, were in bad shape to begin with and are probably getting worse every day. And then the second one was for the remaining properties for infill development. We issued the rehab RFEI on August the 6th, and we gave about a month to respond to that. The infill one was later in the year. We issued that on October the 24th and had about a month to respond. So we had a whole bunch of responses. We can share all that information with you. Julie will know it a lot better than I. The meeting today, the first piece of legislation is about RFEI 1, the rehab properties. And just one other piece of information, during that RFEI process that month, we provided access to the properties where we had access. So meaning those properties where people were living, we didn't really have access. That was the sight unseen condition. And Assistant Director Butler can talk to you a little bit more about the condition of these properties, what we know and what we don't know. And in that RFEI, we did let the bidders know which ones were occupied, which was 7 of the 18. So this ordinance has 16 properties. You'll say, wait a second, didn't you just tell me 18 properties had structures? So there are 3 properties that are not included. One is a multifamily on Superior that we're having different discussions about because it's a different type of animal. And then there was one on DeSoto and one on Goodnor that, Julie, correct me if I'm wrong, we think that those are demos.
That's right.
So we pulled those out.
Okay.
So you'll still say to me, wait a second, okay, 16 parcels, you had 18 originally, minus 3, that's 15, but you just told me 16. Okay, so I'm gonna get to what the one additional parcel is in a second. So we, after getting all of these requests for expressions of interest, we have made a recommendation, and the recommendation is as follows. Startright CDC would get 4 properties for rehab, 2 on Grayton and 2 on Nellaview. Future Heights Rebuild Cleveland, and I know we have members of Future Heights here would get one on Altamont and one on Bainbridge. McIntosh Bloom, which does a lot of rehab work in the city, one on Montford and one on Yellowstone. Smartland, which also does work in the city, one on Brentwood and one on Cedarbrook. Laster Construction wanted to rehab the home on Shannon and live in that home. American General Contractors, one on Rushley and one on Maryland. We have Candy Bashmore here for Kensington, and she can speak to you about why she was interested in that property. Harp Capital, who's already doing work on Crest, would get a Crest property. And then that one additional property is actually an infill property that would go to Harp Capital because they're doing work in that area. So that one would be on Maple. The basic terms that we come up with is that these would be $1,000 each purchase price. 12 months to complete the renovations up to the city code standards. And just I want to reiterate that that would be above and beyond the violations that they've been cited for. So they would have to meet city code standards. So we think that's actually a higher standard and can only be sold to the owner occupant for a 5-year period. You had a first reading of these on the 21st on Monday. We are doing additional research on purchase amounts, and we're going to provide that to you in advance of the second reading on the 5th, May 5th. If we haven't already, we're going to ask the prospective builders to provide us some examples of rehab project costs, so you have a better understanding of how much it's going to take to put into these properties, which should be a factor that you consider in that purchase price. If we haven't already, we're going to ask the prospective builders to, if they have this, give an idea of what they think it might cost to rehab these specific properties. So not just an example from somewhere else, but what do you think about what you're going to have to put into the property that we're potentially giving to you? And then I think I would recommend giving them the opportunity to speak to the purchase price. Because that may be an area where council would want to deviate from what the current recommendation is. So I think we're here mostly to answer your questions on this one. I think you may want to ask questions of the prospective builders, rehabbers. And then my recommendation was, I know it's only 2 of you out of a 3-person committee, but given that there's some more information that we want to get to council, I think you could still have a recommendation back to council with a condition that that information is received and reviewed in committee of the whole or something like that. Just so it doesn't get stuck here in committee and never get back to council. So that's my introduction.
So anyone who has interests in any of these properties here, could just come to the table?
So I think we have.
I want you at the table.
And I will say, so we have 2 people who are part of this first tranche.
Okay.
Which is Future Heights and Candy. And then Kinfolk, they're part of that, what we mentioned earlier, a group that's expressed interest, not for the rehabs, but in infill. So
Okay.
They're here on the phone, but I think that's part of the next conversation.
Okay.
Just so everybody understands.
Okay. So say that one more time, because I want to make sure everybody, they heard.
So we have some people in the room and on the meeting who are part of this first ordinance. And then there's some people on the meeting who are part of the future ordinance, potential ordinance.
The second ordinance.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, who would like to go first? So what is your properties, and you want to tell us the reason why you want them, and further information you want to give to us?
Sure. So one of the properties is on DeSoto and the other one is on Bainbridge. And our Future Heights, again, has a history of rehabbing properties and reselling them to owner occupants. We received an ARPA allocation thanks to the city of Cleveland Heights and Cleveland Heights City Council to do this project. And our goal is to completely rehab the houses, gut and rehab the houses, and then resell them to owner occupants. We have income restrictions on what we can sell them for. At to 120% of area median income, which is still relatively high. So that allows for a higher purchase price than like a typical affordable housing. But that is our goal, is to rehab.
And what is that range off the top? Do you have a range on?
Area median income for a single individual, I'm ballparking here, is around $75,000 roughly. That's, and then it goes up with the size of the household, obviously.
Okay.
But again, our goal is to rehab them and then resell them to owner occupants and add to the home ownership at Cleveland Heights.
Thank you. Councilman Cobb, you have any questions?
I think it's Altamont
Yes.
and Bainbridge.
Oh, sorry, what did I say? I said DeSoto?
DeSoto.
Okay, DeSoto was on my mind because you were talking about that demo. It's Altamont and Bainbridge.
Yes. Mm-hmm. You have any questions?
I love this one.
No, my questions, I'll let them speak and then my questions will
wish I
be
could
directed
Okay.
at the planning department.
Okay. Right. You're on, Miss Lady.
So, it's a house on Kensington.
Kensington.
I own 2 houses next to it. And the idea is, I don't know, I think I'm an old soul because I don't think old things have to be destroyed.
Is this one house?
One house.
Okay.
Yes, with a tenant.
Okay.
I want to make that house, it's to keep the identity of the house, the history of the house as much as possible, but turning it to a modern old house, like having improved kitchens and bathrooms.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
And it's basically to keeping the same view of it's bringing it back to life, what it used to be, but inside having, a modern bathroom, a modern kitchen, and the other 2 properties that I have that are next to it, we rented to mostly our medical students, law students that come into town.
Mm-hmm.
We want people that will invest in the neighborhood, use the restaurants and use the supermarket, not just to come in. Usually I try to in every house have a tenant that is in need, or the 3rd floor or the 1st floor, a family that we can help with the low income. And in this house, I want a 2nd floor for myself. I need to have my creative, I work with creative things with home and design, and I need a space where I can be by myself for a week or 2 at a time. And this is what I want this place for. I feel very safe in Cleveland Heights. I feel very comfortable in the area. And that's the reason I'm fighting Julie for the past. I think I drove her crazy.
Not a bit.
And every week an email, when am I getting my house?
Is the house occupied?
Yes.
Is the tenant in there?
There is a tenant there for, I don't know how many years that she has been there. I think that the house was a tax, haven't been paid, 15 years or 20 years or whatever. So we are gonna try to work with her if possible. But that's my home.
Okay. Well, thank you. All right, Mr. Cobb.
Sure, have you estimated what the reno costs are gonna be?
Well, I think that it's gonna be around 150. To do it the right way, has to be around 150 to $180,000 because I would bring everything down, and we are gonna do new electrical, new plumbing, all new mechanical, and then bring it back up. We are gonna try to use if the floors are good, we are gonna refinish the floors to keep the integrity of the house. So I think it's gonna be between 150 and 180,000. Now, I have my own crew through my building, and materials are gonna cost me less because I'm buying a volume for my 80,000 square feet building. So windows and all the major things, I will pay much less because I'm using the volume for my building there.
Right. And what do you think the fair market value of that home will be once it's completed?
I'm not selling.
All right.
Properties are roots.
Okay, that's, I appreciate that, but what do you think the fair market value of that house would be when it's completed?
Look, it's probably around the 250. I don't know. They are saying 300, 400. I see only what I see on Zillow and this company, these places, and the
Right.
houses in the area are between 200 and 300 depending on what you do to the house.
Yeah. And are you willing to sign a side agreement committing to be an owner occupant home versus
Yes.
flipping it to an LLC?
I'm not flipping it. I'm keeping the house for as long as
What do you estimate the rent to be?
the way that I see the rental and with the type of people that I rented before, it is gonna be between 15 for the first floor, between 1,800 and 2,200.
Okay. How many bedrooms is that in there?
I don't know. I never seen the house.
Oh, okay. All right.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
What is the house, for example, my building, I
Right.
put on an LLC because of liability.
Right.
Is that a problem?
Well, no, my concern was that any of these homes that we're selling at a discounted price, significantly discounted price, that's going to someone that is an investor. And I didn't realize until, I heard your name earlier, but I went and I looked to see who we were selling all these homes to. And to me, if we're selling it at a discounted price to an investment company that is rehabbing it and then selling it at a significant profit, my view on the purchase price is going to be different than if we're selling it to one of our CDCs or a nonprofit.
So
That was the reason for my
okay, so let
question.
me explain a little bit about me because I think that it's important for you to know who you are working with.
I did read about you because when you said who you were, I wasn't paying attention because I looked up the names of everyone, and there's an article about you that I found in connection with the property that you were developing.
Yes, so this property is not a development for money. It's a development. This is, I came to this country 35 years ago. I used to clean homes. Today, I am fortunate enough to have a few homes in my name. The building that I bought, it's a building that I'm putting my company there. And the other two portions of the building are gonna be used to help the children and the young people in the area in Cleveland. Because I was fortunate enough to come to America. And this country has given me the opportunity to become who I am today. My son is an attorney, and I lost my daughter 13 years ago. So this building is in honor of hers. So everything that I'm doing there, we are helping the schools in Cleveland. We are making in each school in our neighborhood. We are designing a corner in the room. So it's a reading corner where the kids from the 6th, 7th, and 8th grades are pushed to read, and we pay them $25 a month for the reader of the month. With 3 months, we couldn't get one child to read a book. And now we have competition, and I had to give $25 per grade. So what we are doing here, what I'm doing now, it's a payback for what this country gave me, for the opportunities it gave me. This home that I got, that I'm trying to get, it's a home that, like I said, I have 2 other houses there. And if you speak to the people that I rent to, during COVID, during times that people, I just had a lady that had cancer. She didn't have to pay rent because thank God I can afford to help her now. This is a way for me to pay back. And when I tell you I don't want to sell the house, it's because this is my way of building roots in this land that provide me with the possibilities to become who I am today. So I'm not trying to make a quick buck to flip and sell. This is a place that my son one day will be able to pass on to his children and to his grandchildren. So
Sure, and I can appreciate that.
I just
also
want you
hope
to
that
know that
Sure.
I'm not flipping the
Right.
house or I'm gonna get it for cheap and sell it high. I don't have that intention.
I appreciate that. My concern as a city council member is to make sure that the city is getting a reasonable return on one of its assets, or all of its assets in this case. And so that's the reason for my questions. And again, I distinguish, between somebody that's getting a home at a discounted price, and this is a discounted price, that's going to turn around and flip it versus possibly living in it, or one of our community development nonprofits that is going to take the proceeds and reinvest them in the community. So I appreciate your answers.
All right. I'm good with it so
Okay, well-
far. You're.
Well, I got a bunch of general
Oh, no,
questions.
I'm leaving it to
Sorry.
you. You want to ask them now or?
Now my general, which
Yes.
I think I expressed at our last city council meeting. So I drove around and I took a look at every one of these properties and I assigned a grade on them. And I'm glad to hear that you're going to go and take a look at them because they are of varying qualities. Some of them are an absolute deplorable condition that I would give an F grade to. Others, and this is strictly based on a drive-by, I have several, and those are the ones that are occupied mostly, have B grades that have very solid bones. And I, in good conscience, can't say that we're going to sell that property for the same that we're selling one that I gave an F grade to, that I'm shocked is not a terrible. So I think that how we've arrived at these purchase prices, and I'll just speak for myself, need to be reevaluated. I would like to see the applications or whatever paperwork were submitted. I don't need to see it from the nonprofits, but from the other private entities, I'd like to see the paperwork that they submitted. I'm curious as to, and maybe we did this, why did we ask them to, in their expression of interest, offer what they were willing to pay for the property?
Yes.
Okay. I'd be interested in seeing that. In some cases, is the $1,000 less than they were willing to pay for it?
In some cases.
Why was that?
So I think since this is our first go round, one of the challenges has been is to get a template that we can utilize as we move forward. And a decision was made internally to create a standard fee so that we could get that template drafted. But I think the intention all along was to make that flexible, to change that price based upon eventually what we came up with. So I'll return to that, I think, at the end of your questions with
Given how I am on the sale prices for our properties, you guys should have maybe anticipated I might have an issue with that. And that was one of Tony's questions, the council president who left earlier, that he felt that the prices of these homes should vary based on the value, where they're located, the condition, the anticipated cost of repairs, things like that.
Can I just jump in right here? So I believe, I'm not going to act like the law director here, but I believe what the law director might say is that that if we have conversations if we do this research and then we come up with a new price and then have conversations with each of the property owners and they're agreeable to it, that's something that I will double check with him, but I believe we could change or amend the legislation to reflect. So we wouldn't have to start from scratch, is my point.
I have a question for you, Mr. Khan.
Yes.
The 3 properties we just spoke about, what grade did you give them?
I gave the Kensington property a C based upon, just again, my exterior view of it.
Gotcha.
The the location. It's in a right there off of Lee Road. What I believe to be the general fair market value for two-family homes when they are completed in that area. So some of that was the potential. The properties that I mentioned, the properties they're going to Future Heights, I gave those D+, C-.
Plus C-. And those are two, correct?
The two Start Right properties, I gave them 1D, C- is D+, and they got one property that C+, the Graydon Road property, was halfway decent.
C plus on Graydon Road?
Yeah, I can share the group
Okay.
that I gave you
Okay.
later.
Could you share, would it be possible to share with us? Because I feel like that, I'd love to supplement it with what we know from inspections on the inside.
Right, and then just a couple of observations. Some of these occupied properties we've owned since 2019. We're 5+ years later. We don't have any more. These are all of our structures we're selling off, right?
Outside of the multifamily I mentioned.
Right.
And then the two that are demos.
Okay.
That are occupied, you're saying?
Yeah, my other concern is, in looking at the purchase agreement, some of these properties require a board up and immediate lawn care and things like that. I don't see anything in these agreements requiring the persons upon the closing date to do that quick remediation rather than letting it sit for a year. And I can, so that should be added to these purchase agreements, and because a year could be too long for that property to be sitting there in the horrible condition.
I'm sorry, can I just, what you just said though, you're saying the horrible conditions outside are the city-owned properties now?
Yes.
With structures on it.
Okay.
The structures.
Okay, so right now the city is not keeping.
It's not keeping its own properties up. In some instances, we've owned these properties for a year. It's an embarrassment, in my opinion, particularly when we go around and we cite property owners and we're not even keeping our own properties up.
I completely agree with you, Councilman Cobb.
We have to do a better job than that.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Not to get on the soapbox, but I think I've said that before about some of our city-owned properties. We got to do better. So those were all of the comments that I had on that. So I'll just, I don't know that, because you guys are going to get us some more information. We need that well in advance of our next meeting and an opportunity to have a discussion on that before I'm prepared to vote.
Okay. So you.
That's just speaking for myself.
I followed the lead. Because I was gonna ask you, what did you think about these three properties since they were here? Did we want to move those out of this legislation as a separate piece and move those forward and hold off on the rest? That's what I was gonna ask you.
Well, I think we should do this all at once.
Okay.
That's,
No, I'm asking the question.
yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
So, Councilman Cobb, you would like to see that information at a committee meeting prior to?
Doesn't have to be, if we could put it in the committee of the whole.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think we need to have another committee.
So that was our intention, is to try to get all of that by the meeting on the 5th. That's our hope.
Yeah, and then I think it's too quick to ask us to vote on that.
It might be, but our intention was at least to try to get it to you.
So you want me to have another committee meeting prior to?
He's saying no.
It's worthy of another discussion, and I do think that we need to take a look, as you've indicated you're going to do, at these prices. And going forward on this next round, I think we should ask the prospective purchasers a number from them. Again, the price is going to vary depending upon the location, as opposed to just setting aside a price. In some instances, I'm all right with selling a property for $1 or $100.
I have a question, and I'm going back to if it's proper or not. Could the next round, maybe people who are on, or people who have interest in property, is it feasible that the committee can talk to those people to find out what their interests are and things like that, or that's beyond our scope?
I think you can, well, first of all, as an individual council person, you can talk to whoever you want. That's number one. Number two is you certainly as a committee could invite folks to this committee meeting. I think
Yes.
that's how I would recommend doing it.
The people who have interest in some properties, maybe invite them in and then we can have a discussion with them.
Sure.
Okay.
And again, with those, we do have a set of recommendations that we have introduced.
No, I understand.
And part of that reason is the pricing part of it.
Okay. But that may have kind of help the process a little bit if we talk to them ahead of time and get some of the questions out of what council may want to have to ask them moving forward. Okay.
So
All right, I
Eric,
just
do you
wanted to
think
make sure it was good to do that.
you think you can get that information by the 30th? 'Cause that's when the packet goes out.
We're gonna try our best. Yeah,
Okay.
we want it so that they can really see it before the meeting.
Yeah.
Is there, again, I'm trying to play
Go ahead.
law director here. Is there a way that on the record you can say that you're moving this back to?
We're moving this back. We will move ordinance 062-2025 back to the committee of the whole for further discussion and amendments.
And I'll second that, so we've done it formally.
All right, so it is now moved to the committee of the whole. What about 63-2025?
Yes, so this, just a brief introduction here, and we do have the parties. So similar reasons as above, we have vacant property, undeveloped property. Mr. Volpe had been reaching out to us, the planning department, for a while, looking for properties to do something with. And prior to the RFEI, we had already begun discussions of these two properties on Cedar Road. I'll let him talk more about the project, but I just want to highlight the basic terms of that. $40,000 for the two lots, $20,000 at closing/transfer, $20,000 upon sale of the three homes for 24 months. The property would revert back to the city if no construction happens within 24 months. The buyer pays the closing costs. There's a community engagement meeting that's required prior to the formal design process. That's what you've been asking on all these types of projects. But there is also a formal design process. That means potentially planning commission, board of zoning appeals, and certainly architectural board of review. There's been some preliminary discussions with those boards. There's going to be opportunities for public input. We did do a fiscal analysis to show that right now those properties are not, in fact, they're not only not generating value to the city, but they're costing the city based upon maintenance. And I know that there's been some concern from the community or the neighborhood about that property, as I'm going to use specific terms here, dedicated as a parkland. So there's nothing that we've found that has that dedicated as parkland. That may be different than conversations that happened through the top of the hill process. But certainly the buyer has to do a title search if something pops up. That's something that we do. So I'll turn it to Paul to maybe talk a little bit about the project and I think answer questions.
Okay, well, I mean, I'm not gonna give you the whole spiel. We've talked about it before. You've seen it, you know what I wanna do. Look, I believe reinvestment needs to occur at all kinds of levels in the city. And sometimes it's small, single-family infill lots like you just talked about. Sometimes it's larger properties like this. And this one's unusual because it's as much a property in the commercial district, the Cedar Fairmount district, which incidentally I live in that neighborhood. It is as much a part of that. All that frontage, there's over 300 lineal feet of frontage that is sitting there empty. And I've not talked to a person, I've talked to quite a few people about it, that think that that is an asset to that community. It ought to have something on it. But it's not zoned for anything other than single-family residential. That's what I propose to build. The total investment is about $2.5 to $2.6 million. It will attract affluent folks. These are not inexpensive homes. And the intent here is to do something that is of superior quality in our city, that says something about who we are in that arena. This is our most affluent community, and we have to respect the fact that our diversity comes in different forms, and we have diverse neighborhoods. And the same kind of attention that I'm paying here to the quality of the planning and the architecture is what I have proposed on Coventry deal, which didn't go through. We're building senior housing there rather than condominiums that I wanted to build. I'm a total advocate for sale housing. I don't do rental, and I believe that we need to reinvest. I've proposed something on the Noble Triangle, but I haven't gotten any inroads there because honestly, the mayor has a different opinion as to how he wants to go about developing that. He's talked about getting some planners in from another community. And also as a result of my work on the Noble Avenue Nobility Court project, by replanning the project, we ended up with a lot there that is absolutely perfect to do some for sale housing, which would be at the lower end of the scale. So my interest is for sale housing, not one type of for sale housing. And this is the first project that I finally been able to sink my teeth into. And I've already presented why I think it would be a real asset to this community.
Okay. I think you've presented to us several times. Yes.
Well, before you vote, I certainly would like to have my say.
Come on, come to the table.
So again, Kelly Oaksack, I live on Delaware. I actually have two houses in Cleveland Heights. I have one on Grandview that I rent, which was my first house that I bought in 2019, when I was trying to figure out if I wanted to live in Cleveland Heights after being in Long Hills for many years, from which I was a council person for 6 years and a council president when I lived there. Do you live in Moreland Hills?
I live in Shepherd Pike.
I'm here today because I now live on Delaware and we are a very tight-knit group and everyone is up in arms about this proposed project, which I still don't really understand what it is, except maybe one house, two houses that you're proposing.
Why would they
Why find a place so you can play it anywhere? Well, the reason everyone's up in arms is, I don't know if you guys are familiar with how those two properties came to Cleveland Heights in the first place. And I don't wanna, I'm new to the community, so you said there was nothing in the background, so I'm asking. Do you guys know how it came to be?
No.
Anyone?
Well, there's a long history, I think, going back 100 years.
Well,
with those properties.
So 1948, and this is city councilman information. The library owned part of the property, and the other part was bought by Hazel Hosteller and Joseph. And together they had decided to give it to Cleveland Heights with the instruction that it would not be anything except for street widening and public park purposes. This is all approved by council, all there. There was a deed that went on, also said this. Now the deed was only good for 30 years, so we do understand that's 1978. But all this time, all the residents have called us the Bluff. It's been an area that has been green space. If you live in that area, which you say you did, I can tell you it's dangerous around that corner. And although I'm telling you all this stuff, and this is why we're concerned, because this has been an ongoing, at least the residents, that this was an ongoing thing. I don't know if this trumps the deed or not, because I'm not a lawyer. However, have you walked along that corridor? Any of you?
I have.
Okay.
The Starbucks at Cedar
No,
Fairmount
I'm
every
talking
day.
about-
And I've been on the property before.
Okay, so if you come down Delaware or South Overlook and go up Cedar around, there's 8 foot of concrete where the sidewalk is. So think of this property, the two side streets, 8 foot from the street to the bluff, which is a hill. If you walk on there on a busy day and you're walking with your dog, the cars come racing up the hill, they splash you with water. In the wintertime, the snow plow comes by, puts it over the sidewalk, you can't even walk on it. So the residents have to actually walk up on top of the hill with their dogs and stuff to go down because there's no place to walk. The cars fly up Cedar Road. It's such a dangerous place. So I'm speaking more that it's such a dangerous intersection. And to even develop and have another house on either end, the people whip into South Overlook, whip into Delaware to cut up to North Park so fast. Even with Nighttown now gone and Edwin's there, cars are parking and people, I can't tell you how many times I've seen people almost kidding each other because they're not supposed to have any parking up until the first driveway and there's signs for their parking and the cars just are whipping in. This neighborhood loves their bluffs. But I think even overall for Cleveland Heights, we talk about areas that you own and places that can add. Even when Top That Town went up, and even on your website now today, which happened way before I lived here, there's a picture of it being a park space and people walking and having a sidewalk. I ask you people here at Planning to rethink this and rethink this particular space. And if anything, you're going to develop it, keep it, make it safe for the people that live there, put a tree lawn, extend into the bluff to put a safe walking space. So the wheelchairs that are coming up, and I can't tell you how many people come from Amberside with their wheelchairs up and down Cedar to go to the grocery store or whatever. There's space that's safe for us to walk our dog, safe for the kids to ride their bikes, that they don't go off the edge into the street with the busy cars flying up the hill. If you don't live there and you don't see it, you don't experience it. It's not just 2 empty acres. It's a place that really could enhance that area, enhance coming into Cleveland Heights from the hill, coming down, put some flowering trees, make it look beautiful, make it safe. I'm happy to show you this stuff. I'm happy for you to go back in and see, one of the residents found this very easily on the website last night. To show that the intent for those properties that were gifted so many years ago were never meant to be more than what they are. So I kindly ask you to take it off the agenda, not sell that property, not suggest selling that property. You'll make a lot of people on the street happy. If you do want to go forward, you're gonna have a fight, I believe.
Can I take a quick look at your stuff there?
Sure. This property here.
Any questions?
Because I can't see it. Hang on. I'm getting a little phone here and I'm trying to listen.
Sorry,
I'm sorry, I'll talk to you about it later.
I was just curious if we could figure out.
We are on I think we were all caught off guard, to be honest with you, because on Monday, I happened to go on Nextdoor looking for someone to fix my lawnmower. And the next thing you know, people are talking about, did you see what's the agenda tonight? And we're surprised to see that these 2 parcels were on. I did email President Council Kuda, because living in the area, there's a lot of people who have lived in the street for a long time. There's people who have had big houses, downsized to smaller houses, people who moved away, come back. There's children who live there, who grew up there. There's all this history, and all these people know this stuff. Even in our little Delaware book, there's one resident, Susan E. Whitegard, who has, I think she's on her 3rd house, or maybe she's on her 2nd house. She has all the history going back to, I think she said 1999 or 78 or something. And one of the booklets even shows that Chessie Leak, I believe her name was, who was very, very strong in the cane arts of the Cane Park. Before she passed, people say she pushed forward with Cleveland Heights to continue with this agreement. That is one piece I didn't locate, but I think there's history here, and it's not just quick, and there's more than just 2 pieces of property that Cleveland Heights wants to put on the cutting block. I think we're missing a huge opportunity to do something wonderful for the residents in the city, and certainly that part of town.
Have there been any community engagement around this? Do you know?
Nobody knew anything. It was on. And believe me, everyone on this list, everyone knows I'm here speaking on my street behalf.
Not yet. Our meetings have been in executive session until the legislation was.
But there's going to be a public meeting. I will be sending invitations out. People aren't gonna see something that isn't real. I've been through this kind of thing my whole career. I've been doing this for 40 years. I've worked in every neighborhood you can possibly imagine of all types. And for people to come out and respectfully judge things before they see them is unfortunate and, in my opinion, disrespectful, but that's okay. That's okay. You sat through this meeting and you heard all the other things that shake your head, all the other things I've done in my career, madam.
I'm not saying this isn't against you, sir. I don't
Yes, it is. Yes, it is, because you haven't taken the time or the respect to say, we have some opinions. Yeah, the history stuff, I know all that history. It's gone. Back in the day when that was done, when the library thing, this was a whole different community. It was undeveloped. Yes, it was walkable. And excuse me, Cedar Road was 4 lanes, not 6 lanes. I know it's dangerous. And for anybody to utilize that as a park with that hillside and that narrow sidewalk, it makes absolutely no sense, okay? Now, if the city is interested in taking it back and getting a bulldozer and carving out the edge of the hillside and making it a even smaller park for people to walk their dogs, because that's all I've ever seen is people walking their dogs, and you know what dogs do, I have one, then that's what you can do. But my point is that I have vetted this with all of the city departments, all of the city officials. I've talked to both neighbors that front the property. Both of them one thinks it's a fabulous idea, okay, and said, I wish my house was as attractive as what you've designed, okay? And I'm talking to potential buyers that are interested in spending a lot of money to live there. Do you think they'd want to live there if it was so awful and dangerous and dark and everything else?
Madam Chair.
I just don't understand this.
Hold on.
This is not a place for a debate like this.
Hold on.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
and I would agree with that.
We shouldn't be debating.
But here's no one has seen your plans yet except for city council and executive session. So as far as I know, all you guys are aware of is that there's some development going there.
Correct.
And we've had the benefit of seeing the plans, which no one else has, and I think that's what needs to happen. I sort of kind of thought we were going to do that at our last council meeting. That would be on the agenda before we take any vote on it.
Yeah.
I'm waiting to get a list of the neighbors that are affected halfway up the block on both of the side streets. I've also spoken to the director of the CID, who is excited as she can be about the project, and admits that this is the blankest part of the business district and needs something exciting along it. And look, when I can, I will. I'm not proposing to get the 3rd reading until we've had the public meeting. But I'm not going to the meeting asking for permission. Understand that. We don't go to a meeting like this and say, hey, this is what I've planned. It's all legal. It's been reviewed by the public. And because the neighbors say they don't like it, we're not going to do it. If that's the way we're going to do things in this community, then we're not going to get anything done.
So what is your recommendation?
All right, so let's not jump the gun, all right?
Well,
so
I'm jumping
heard now, and let's not get everything worked up about it. You've heard that we're going to have a presentation on it. We'll have some community engagement. You've brought things to to the attention of us. You've had an opportunity, the community will have an opportunity before we take a final vote on it. And I would just ask that you tell the residents to reserve judgment on this until they have seen Paul's plans at his presentation. But we're aware of your concerns. Previously, I hadn't talked to anyone. I saw someone posted on Nextdoor about it, and I didn't know how they found out about it. But
respectfully, though, Councilman, as she's expressed it, the neighbor's concern is not building new single-family houses. The neighbor's concern is they want to leave it the way it is, okay? I can't do anything about that, okay? So why should I even show them what I'm proposing, okay? Because it doesn't sound like you're open-minded. Are you willing?
Wait, let's stop. first of all, I don't wanna go into a back and forth as far as a discussion on what should happen and what shouldn't happen at this point. First, we need to move through the process. And I think through the process will be, maybe the first reading.
Already done first.
I mean, huh?
You already done first.
Oh, we've done first reading.
Right.
So we would have to do a third reading.
Yeah.
But that would come after Paul is doing he's already talking about doing a community meeting and all that where people come together? Or is he doing that, are you doing that presentation in front of council again?
No.
What are you doing?
Oh, no.
You're doing a
We had the first
community?
reading, we were gonna have the second reading, so it's ready to go. We have a purchase agreement. Regardless of whether or not council approves it, council has to approve the purchase agreement. So the idea was to take that to the second reading, and in that interim, between now and the third reading, where you'd approve it, I'm going to have I'm calling a meeting, okay? I'm gonna send out notices to everybody I get addresses for, and one of the biggest things we're trying to do is figure out where to have it.
Council doesn't have to okay anything though.
I gotta go to work.
Yes, they do.
Let's send it back to the committee of the whole.
It's the city's property.
But they don't have to okay it.
So what I'm gonna do, because I need to leave to go back to work, so what the recommendation?
So my recommendation on the motion that I would make is that we've reviewed it and we
Take it back to-
send it back to
the committee of the
committee of the whole
Okay. For
further discussion.
Okay, I'll agree,
And then we proceed with the second reading.
yes, okay.
And just to confirm, you don't expect a presentation at the second reading. There will be a community meeting at some point between now and the third reading. But it will likely be after the second.
And I would recommend that anyone who is opposed of it, they need to come to that meeting or community meeting and express themselves at that time. And at the next council meeting, whoever is expressing, they need to come to the council meeting and express that.
Again, I just want to express, if there, council doesn't have to hand stamp everything, that's why you're here.
No, we don't.
And for you to say they have to do it is.
I didn't say that.
You did
When
just
did I say that?
We're not gonna do that right now.
I would still I asked that in the committee of the whole, that you do research the documentation that I provided to you. And see how much that holds.
She has it.
Okay. And also, I would love to know if you could research some safety and see how many tickets have been over there, if you've had any accidents over there. Because as much as it's not about development, or is it about development, it really is about, from my perspective, an opportunity to beautify that area. You're talking about, all I heard today was about trees and making things look nice, and why is that any different? And does it have to be residential, or can it be a wide street, a treescape? There's other opportunities here, so as council members, you can explore this too. You don't have to just take what the city tells you to do. That's why we have you here. Remember that.
You're absolutely correct. And I thank you for bringing this to our attention. We will take it to the committee of the whole and discuss it. And please let your neighbors know that what's going on so they can come and express themselves as well. Okay? Thank you so much for that. I appreciate it.
That's what
Okay.
Russell,
Yes.
hand raised.
Yes, Matthew, 2 minutes.
Hi, no problem, thank you. I just wanted to make sure that I heard correctly. So both pieces of legislation that were just discussed are on the same track, so to speak. They'll go to committee of the whole on May 5th.
Yes.
And then second reading that day.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, seeing nothing else today, this meeting is now adjourned.